Alrighty, it is now 8:05, so we're going to get rolling here. So, hello everyone and happy Monday. I hope you're all having a great week. I have a few things I just kind of want to go over and mention before I get to the questions. There were a lot of very deep questions this week, so I kind of want to get things moving along here. First thing is, I don't know if you noticed, but I used to go by Uziel on Photocracy, and I've changed it to my name, which is Chuck Gross. I think pretty much everyone already calls me Chuck anyways. I don't really think that'll be an issue, but I figured it was worth mentioning. I've used the nickname Uziel since the 90s online, but the internet kind of moved away from being anonymous to using real names. So I thought it was time for a change. And that nickname was mostly for like gaming-related forums and my nickname, the characters I made in video games. So I figured it was probably time to kind of separate those things since two distinct purposes. So just wanted to mention that. Secondly, I wanted to mention that the continuation group has some new trackers. The first is the nutrition tracker, where you can kind of see how everyone's doing calorie and protein-wise. That's optional, and it's opt-in. So if you're interested in that, let me know, and I'll make a column for you that has your username, your calorie, and your protein goal. You can enter it in, and it's kind of just lets you kind of see how everyone else is doing as far as adherence. I'm participating in that one too, so you can kind of see. But as you know, I am also tracking on MyFitnessPal. My goal is to track every single day in 2014. So as I remember, I'm going back and entering them in there as I hit my goals or don't hit my goals. There's also a progress tracker, and that's how we're going to be entering our weekly updates from now on, instead of through the Google form. What I'm trying to do for that one is if you could send me your email address if you haven't already, and I'll make a sheet for you. Once I have everyone's email address, I will set it up so that you can view all of the other sheets, but you can only edit your own sheets. That's a little bit of a pain to set up, so I'm trying to wait till I have everyone's email address before I fully set that up. So if you submit any progress updates from now on, please use that sheet to do that. And lastly, I wanted to mention that I did create a challenge for the continuation group for the month of December. This challenge, the last month's challenge, was a walking challenge. You could walk the most distance. This challenge is a free-for-all, which means that the top 5 people with the most points will be recognized. I bumped the podium spots up from 3 to 5 just because we have a larger group now. So you have to go to the main feed for EFL Continued, and you have to opt into the challenge. So pretty much anything you log, the points will count towards your total. I'm not going to participate in that one just because I don't, unless a bunch of you think I really should. But so we've also been discussing a lifting-based challenge. So please think about and discuss which lift you want to center it on. I do want to mention not everyone is currently lifting because they're not willing or they're not able. Regardless of their individual circumstances. The options for doing a lifting-based challenge are bench, squat, deadlift, or the combination of all 3 of them. Those are the options we have available, so please keep that in mind. So with that said, I'll move on to the questions. I want to preface the question section with the fact that the questions themselves and some of the answers could really kind of go really far in depth, and I could probably talk online about some of these. However, we're not going to talk all night. I'm going to address them the best as I can, but my hope is that in addressing these questions, the answers that I give you will lead to some further discussion within the group, and then we can go into a little bit more depth if need be, if it's not sufficient for you. So the first question comes from Sem, and he's asking HIIT versus LISS cardio. So if you don't know, HIIT or HIIT is high intensity interval training, and LISS is light intensity steady state. Just to give a brief example, for example, HIIT would be something like you go as hard as you possibly can, fast and tense for a certain period of time, say 20 seconds, or maybe even 10 seconds, then you rest for 20 seconds, and you go through intervals of that. So you're kind of breaking down your intensity, taking a little bit of a break where you're like, if we were on a bike, you'd pedal as fast as you can for 10 seconds, and then you'd pedal slowly just to kind of cool off for 20 seconds, and you go back and forth between that, where like one set of one intense section and one cool down section would be one set essentially. And steady state is basically cardio you do for 30 minutes and you don't really vary how hard you're going. You just kind of try to keep the same pace the entire time. So this is one of those questions that's endlessly and fiercely debated. Both sides, show a bunch of studies proving that one is better than the other for any particular purpose: fat loss, fitness, performance, whatever. So the answer is, it depends. Sam, if you were asking my opinion, it really depends on what your goals are or just how you feel about them. So for what I do, it really depends if you're going for what's optimal versus what's doable repeatedly for ease of incorporating it into your busy life. I kind of do a mixture of both, and it's really just what do I feel like doing that particular day, if I feel like doing anything cardio-wise at all. The best bang for your buck exercise is probably doing HIIT. And for me, that would be in the form of running hills. If you don't know what running hills means, that comes from American football exercise training, where basically you run up a steep hill as fast as you possibly can. And then once you get back to the top, you immediately walk back down. And you keep doing those till you basically fall over. Next time you do it, you try to beat that record, meaning if you got up the hill once the first time, you try to make it up two the next time. This is a very great way to hate exercise for a very, very short period of time, meaning you could run one or two hills and it may take you 5 minutes, but it will be a lot of work done in a very short period of time. So if you hate cardio exercise, but you want to do it for the health benefits or to be in better shape, that's certainly an option. It's a very small time investment for a big payoff. You can easily see quantifiable results between one session and the next, but you're not likely to enjoy it. If you do enjoy that, more power to you. That's awesome. On the other hand, list cardio may not be optimal as whatever your goals are. For me, it's something that's a little bit easier to incorporate, which for me means I'm more likely to do it more often and I'm more likely to enjoy it. I have an Airdyne stationary bike, and that's basically a stationary bike that's not, not plugged in. It's a fan. So you basically set your own resistance. So what I'll do is I'll, get on that and I'll put on some Netflix and I'll do some light cycling and watch some TV. And that for me, it's a way to just get some more activity in and then catch up on some TV shows rather than sitting on the couch and doing it. Light means you're going at a good pace, not just almost doing nothing, but someone could talk to you. If they were asking you a question, you could reply. You might be kind of close to the point of out of breath, but not like panting or unable to respond to them. So in that case, you'd still be putting forth a steady, constant state of effort. I can't particularly recommend one or the other because it really depends on which one you're going to enjoy more. And the thing you're likely to enjoy more and get more pleasure out of doing is the one thing you're more likely to make it a habit. So if you're looking for an exercise to add in as a habit that you want to do regularly, I'd say find the one that works best for your schedule, for your stress level, and which one you enjoy more. For most people, I'm going to guess that's a mixture of both. So when time is short, you do the one that takes less time. And if you have extra time, you kind of fill that in. If you have room wherever you are and you want to watch TV and you also want to get some extra activity in, it's not a bad idea. Excuse me. I would caution against using cardio as a calorie sink, though, and I encourage everyone to kind of view exercise as a way to improve your mental and physical health, not just a way to burn calories. That's kind of the mentality we want to get away from. And as you know, I do specifically recommend that everyone try to get a brisk walk in after a meal. It's a great way to clear your head, help your digestion, but it's lighter of an exercise that I wouldn't even qualify it as light intensity steady state. That would be something that you're specifically trying to keep up a pace. Light walking, you could just go and walk around and not really worry about your pace or, am I exercising enough? It should just be walking for the purpose of, clearing your head and just kind of getting some extra activity in. Okay. Excuse me. The next question is from Patrick. And he has some concerns about a crazy schedule. He says that he works crazy hours and that this leads to sabotage for him where he has days where he's up really early and other days where he's working past midnight. So it's tough for him to get into a routine, and this results in his eating schedule being out of whack. He realizes that the general suggestion here would be to bring your food to work, but that's not something he seems to want to do, even though it seems reasonable. Patrick, I think it's good that you've identified a source of sabotage for you. That you know there's a scenario when it happens, you're likely to sabotage yourself. Excuse me. Given that you've already think that preparing your meals in advance and bringing them with you would help to correct that, I would say start to think about why you're so hesitant when you've already identified that it's a reasonable solution that may help fix that problem. Excuse me, I'm going to get a drink or I'm just going to keep coughing. I'll be right back. Sorry about that. When the weather changes abruptly, it always plays havoc with my my well-being. I went from like 55 yesterday to 20. So, okay, as I was saying, Patrick, you've already kind of identified that there's a reasonable solution that would help you fix that problem, which is preparing in advance and having options that kind of fit your goal around you, so that when you don't have a lot of time, you have something easily within reach, doesn't really require too much willpower, that it would kind of fit your goals. So I would ask, before I kind of delve into an option, I would ask, is your issue with that idea, is it a practical issue? Meaning, is there no storage space? Are you against it on principle? If so, why? Or is there some emotional response that you're just against it? Maybe you can explore why that is. And you're able to like reason your way through that logically as to why you're so against the idea of preparing in advance. Because I really think that would help you. The more you prepare in advance, the less you have to rely on willpower, because you've already made the decision. The past you has already made the decision that's going to affect the future you. Therefore, you've kind of eliminated decision fatigue, where you don't have to decide what to eat because you've already prepared for it in the past. Other than that, because I realize that that's not always going to apply, and there are going to be cases where that won't apply, is you could look at what exactly are you doing that's sabotage when your schedule's crazy, and what is the best bad choice you can make in that scenario. We can kind of discuss that more in the group, but that would require drilling down into a more specific scenario than you've kind of given. But an example of that would be, for example, let's say you're in the lab early, and on the way to the lab, you're hungry, and you didn't prepare breakfast in advance. What do you do in that case? So I'm just going to assume that you'd probably stop and get some fast food. So there are multiple fast food chains as options that you could kind of configure differently than they present, and there just may be an option you're not considering. So for example, I know Starbucks has like a spinach feta wrap that's 340 calories, high in protein, high in fiber, and it's not like that bad of a price. So it's possible that if you're in those cases, you're relying on fast food, you just might want to look at some other options. And that's something we can help you as a group kind of say, hey, these are the fast food chains that I would hit up. What's my best option here? And that is preparation in advance, but it's not preparing your food in advance. It's kind of having better options available to you so you don't have to decide in the moment. And the same reason you don't want to decide in the moment is the same reason you don't go grocery shopping hungry, because by that point, I think I mentioned this on a previous hangout, is that when you're already hungry, your prefrontal cortex is already stressed, and you're less likely to make a decision that sticks with your plan. If you're doing something differently than going for fast food that I haven't covered, please let me know. And like I said, we'll definitely discuss it. Sorry. The next question is from Laura. She asks if there's any strategies for focusing on short-term goals when the long-term ones seem insurmountable. This is a great question. There's a couple different ways that I'd recommend approaching that. So if you're having trouble focusing on your long-term goals and you're kind of ignoring them and then focusing on the long-term ones instead, I would say that it's probably best to consider your current short-term goal a midterm goal, and you need a closer, more easily reachable short-term goal. So rather than saying, I'm going to lose X pounds or X kilograms by Y date, try something like a 5 or 2.5 kilogram interval with no set date on it. So that way you're always either 5 pounds or 2.5 kilograms to your next short-term goal. And that way it may seem like you're setting yourself up to be easy, but when you think about it, it's the constant fulfilling of those goals and those minor successes that kind of is an avalanche of successes that will get you to that midterm goal and then get you to that long-term goal. So if you're kind of getting bored with the midterm goal and it makes you think about how far away the long-term one is, I would say you need to kind of focus on a more immediate goal that's going to happen sooner. Like I said, I wouldn't recommend putting a date on it, but make it so close number-wise that you're likely to run into it a lot sooner than you would have what I'd term as a midterm goal. So when you make progress, even if it's tiny, you're going to have like a countdown of like, hey, I'm only like a kilogram from my next short-term goal. And then as soon as you hit it, immediately set another one. So you're always really close to a goal, regardless of how many you've already achieved. So you're always seeing progress and always kind of ticking down how close you are to one. I would say once you've kind of hit that goal, don't ever subtract your progress. So, as we know, the scale fluctuates horribly sometimes. So if you've hit your short-term goal and then the next day you add a pound, don't undo your short-term goal. It's just be aware that there are fluctuations. So you shouldn't temporarily take back your short-term goal. Just kind of keep going from there and don't let that bother you. Another option would be, if you feel you're focusing on goals, especially since goals can be number-oriented to the scale, you could focus on your habits rather than the goals themselves, because it's the habits that kind of feed the goal. And in reality, those habits and non-scale victories are your real successes, and they matter more. So the numbers on a scale or measuring tape are not real successes, even though that our brains tell us, hey, that's awesome. And that kind of helps me change and modify your plans as we go along. But those numbers, they don't define you. They don't really matter in the end. What really matters is the good habits you form, as well as your ability to break the bad habits. And that matters way more than any numbers. So I would say if you kind of focus on those good habits and become like obsessed, not obsessed, but like addicted to the good habits, and think of it like these habits are going to get me to where I want to be, and then focusing on that may help. You could do both of those if you don't want to do that as an alternative to the short-term goals. Oh, excuse me. All right, so the next question comes from Danny. Danny had 2 questions, so I'm going to answer both of them. Danny asks how much water you should drink in a day. That depends. Do you have a cough as bad as mine? Well, for each person, the answer is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to go against the trend here, and I'm going to talk about this more in the future, because this is something that actually really bugs me. It seems like a lot of fitness people out there that write about fitness and health and well-being, they say drink water for everything. Are you hungry? Drink more water. Are you tired? Drink more water. Are you is your pee not clear? Drink more water. Just a list. Every single problem in the world is solved by drinking more water. Are you going to have coffee? Drink water beforehand so you get your water in. I'm going to say I don't agree with that at all, and that's kind of from experience. I used to buy into that, and I used to think that way. And the only thing that really got me was I had bad sleep quality because I was up peeing in the middle of the night 3 or 4 times, and I was always cold as a result of that. So I kind of scaled back my water drink intake altogether to when I was actually thirsty. And maybe I would make sure to have a little bit of water with my meals just to help with digestion. I don't think you need to track your water intake the way you are doing with food, because your food has water in it too. And especially vegetables and fruits, which are mostly water. What many people don't realize is that when you see water recommendations, if it was, say someone said 120 ounces of water for a person that weighs this much. That recommendation actually includes the amount of water you're getting through your food too, but there really is never a disclaimer that's attached to that, even though it should be. I've looked at the studies that those are based on, and it did include the water from the food in that number. So it's possible that many people, as they get into a healthy lifestyle and fitness, that they over drink water to compensate, and there are some side effects you can encounter from that. And like I mentioned, one of them is being really cold for no reason and having to pee all the time, which is not great, especially when sleep is one of the most important investments you can make in your health, is getting better sleep. So if you're waking up many times in the middle of the night, you're probably scaling back on your water intake, especially before bed, can kind of help with that. The other side effect could be that your minerals you get, like potassium, sodium, if you're drinking too much water, those could be flushed out, and you could kind of be feeling crappy if you don't have those in the right balance. So that's another thing you might want to watch out for. So I would say just drink to your thirst level. Don't overdo it. Just kind of try to play that one by ear. But like I said, I wouldn't worry about trying to track it or anything. Like MyFitnessPal offers the ability to track, and I would not recommend that at this time. So, and obviously try to make better choices about getting water in as opposed to other drinks. But that's you need to consider, if you're drinking like coffee or a Diet Pop, that's towards, there's water in that, so that's towards your total fluid count. You shouldn't drink like all of the water on top of other things that also have water in them, because it's all water in the end. And Danny had another question about investing in a home gym, because she knows that I have a home gym myself, and wanted to know the pros and cons. Before I get into that, I do have the Q&A portion on, if anyone wants to ask questions as I'm kind of going, and I'll get those at the end. I know there's a delay in asking, so it's probably better if you submit them now, and then I'll check them out before we finish up. I didn't want to say, hey, time to go, and then the questions are delayed before I close it, because that has happened before. I just figured I'd mention that. Excuse me. Okay, so the pros and cons of a home gym. There are many pros. That's that you can work out whenever you like, especially if you have a crazy schedule. Normally, if you're scheduling an hour for a workout, if your schedule gets really crazy and you have a home gym, you can break it up, and do half here and then half later in the day. You also save on travel time and cost. You don't have to worry about changing at the gym or forgetting your gym clothes. You don't have to deal with showering with people that are nasty at the gym. You don't have to worry about, bringing your flip-flops to take into the shower. You don't have to remember about packing things you need. The biggest cons are going to be the upfront cost. I think my initial starting cost was, I say $1,200, and that was maybe 5 years ago. You're going to have to also deal with the fact that there may be some exercises you want to do that you don't have the equipment for, or even if you could get it, you don't have the room for it, or you may basically run out of money to not have everything you need. It can also lead to an addiction to buying new equipment. I kind of am faced with that problem myself, where I have this list of equipment that I scour Craigslist for every day, looking to see if someone has it for cheap. So I'm saying that's a con, but that's a good problem to have, I guess. The biggest con that I can think of is ceiling height. Unless you have a space where you're be putting it, have really high ceilings, you may run into issues there. Mine's in my basement. I have low ceilings in my basement, and I'm 6'2". So certain exercises either can't do them for practical reasons, or they have to be modified. So an example of that would be I have a squat cage, and it basically touches the ceiling, and there's a chin-up bar at the top. So if I'm not careful, I have put my head through the ceiling a couple times, and I haven't done it in a while, so there's no evidence now, but I've had times where I had gigantic cuts up the top of my head with scabs, where it was people ask me what happened, and it's basically I did a chin up and smacked my head off the ceiling really hard. So that's one. Anything overhead for me is not doable in a home gym. So overhead press, either have to do it seated on a bench or seated on the floor. I've occasionally gone to commercial gyms. I've gone to my university gym, and I do prefer working out at home because I don't have to wait for equipment. If someone's using something, and I don't have to deal with other people trying to talk to me or distracting distracting me when I'm just focused on getting my workout done and getting out of there. So I would say the biggest problems are going to be space, cost, and that, just having to adapt to not being able to have the range of equipment and exercises that you'd like to do. You kind of have to make some compromises in that regard. And similar to that one, our last question is from Melissa, who has a home gym but does not have a squat rack. She's looking for some alternatives because one alternative would be that, and I'm just going to mention it even though she said she can't do this, and that's okay because I can't either, is that some people will take the weight off the floor, push it up, and then bring it back down into their shoulders and then squat that way. Yeah, right, that only works for like once you're new to squatting. So that's not going to work, and that makes perfect sense. Most people can't do that unless they're brand new. And Melissa has tried hack squats. I can sympathize. Hack squats are like the most awkward thing ever. If you don't know what a hack squat is, you essentially hold the barbell below your butt and you squat down like that. It's possible I'm incredibly uncoordinated. It's probably likely. But I felt like I was just going to knock myself over when I was doing it, and it didn't seem like a good idea to do. So in Melissa's case, there's a few alternatives. You may want to look and see if there is a cheap squat rack or something like squat stands, where it wouldn't be like a full cage setup. It's essentially just like a tripod for each side that is like an adjustable squat rack. You can adjust the sides independently. I know a couple people that have those for like a garage gym or whatever, just to be able to squat. You lose the benefit of being able to ditch the weight if it's too heavy onto the rack. But that, if that's an acceptable compromise. And they make squat racks that are like half height, meaning they have that adjustable thing up at the top for where you put the barbell, but they also have like a catch in the middle. So it's like half height, like a half rack, I guess you'd call it. Other than that, and if you've already outgrown dumbbell squats, as you mentioned, this is probably a good time to switch to some single leg work. You could do like pistol squats, and that's where you basically you have one foot up on a bench behind you, and then you just kind of squat down like that with one leg. And if you switch to single leg work, you'll probably find that, I could be wrong, but you'd probably find that one leg is a little bit stronger than the other. So you'd probably want to work with the working weight will be the leg that's weaker. And then as you work your way up, it'll probably, if you do that and do all single leg stuff, it'll probably take you a way to work your way up to the dumbbells you have. And then once you've kind of maxed out your dumbbells with single leg work, that'll take you some time, I assume. And then you can probably reevaluate from there. At that point, you could consider some heavier dumbbells, or you could look at some of the other options I mentioned as far as like a squat rack or squat stands or a half rack, and see if that works for you. But I do think in that case that if I were in your shoes, I would definitely go with single leg stuff. I will warn you, they can be very humbling, especially if you do have a weaker leg like I do. My left leg is horribly weak, and I have awful balance. So when I first tried doing single leg stuff, I could barely do it with body weight. So just if you're not ready, just be prepared to fall over the first time if you have balance issues like I do. So, all right, that is all of the questions that I saw leading up to this. I don't see anything submitted, so I'm just going to go ahead and check the groups really quick. I am not seeing any more questions having been asked. Like I said, I realized that some of these questions, the answers we could go into really deep discussions here. So if something I said kind of resonated and you'd like to know more, let's discuss it as a group. So, please post any more questions you have, or if you have something you'd like to kind of discuss in more details, we can kind of go from there. Thank you for attending. Thank you for watching and listening. And I will talk to everyone soon. I hope you guys have a great week, and we'll talk soon. All right, take care.